All right, everyone. Jeremy Knauff here with another episode of the Public Relations Declassified live stream. And we're going to be talking about something that impacts how people perceive you and your brand, how they perceive you as a person. And it's really something that is very foundational to all of your public relations efforts, right? Whether it's you being on a TV interview, you talking on social media, speaking on stage, frankly, even just interacting with people on a regular basis, right? So what we're going to be unpacking today is 5 phrases that you should stop saying that scorch your credibility. So there's certain things that we say. Some of them are just phrases that are in common use. A lot of people say these things just because it's just a thing people say. But unfortunately, a lot of these phrases actually damage your credibility. They take away from your brand. So the first thing that we're going to unpack on this is the phrase, I think. Now, I do want to add a caveat here. This is not 100% across the board for this particular phrase. There are cases where saying, I think, does make sense. It is the right phrase to say. But for the most part, it's not. And here's where the difference lies. So if somebody's asking you for your prediction on how you think something's going to go, maybe there's a new regulation pending in your industry, or certain statistics are indicating that your industry may go in a certain direction or something like that. In those cases, because you're making a prediction, then yes, saying I think or I believe is totally acceptable. But most people use the phrase differently. When it comes to most people saying I think, what they're typically doing is they're using it in cases where it should just be something that they know, right? So let's say that a journalist is asking you, do you think entrepreneurs should be more active on social media? Saying, I think they should be more active is not a good way to answer that, because it's introducing a level of uncertainty, right? It's softening your answer. And softening answers is something that someone does when they're looking for kind of an exit, right? An escape, right? If things don't go the way that they want, or, they're kind of afraid of being criticized for taking a stance on a particular thing. So that's why using it in situations like that can have a negative impact. It can actually hurt you from the perspective of making you look unsure or uncertain. So it's fine for predictions. It's fine for looking into the future. It's not fine when just talking about normal day-to-day stuff in your industry, right? Best practices, strategies, tactics, things like that. So for the most part, avoid the phrase, I think, or I believe. Another one that you need to avoid is, what I can say is ... right? Whatever comes after that. And this is something that people often use when they're actually trying to dodge a question, right? They're dodging taking accountability for a statement. They're dodging answering a question, something of that nature. So the way that typically plays out is they will ask a question. A journalist will ask you a question. They're looking for a certain answer. Rather than answering that, what a lot of people will do is they will say, well, what I can say is XYZ, and they'll shift to some different topic or some very small facet of that and actually avoid answering the question. And this hurts you because when you avoid answering a question, right, you're on the media, you're being interviewed, whether it's TV, whether it's an article, whether it's whatever, you're being interviewed because you're supposed to be an expert. So if you're not willing to answer the questions that people are asking you, and if you're going to deflect and try to change the subject to some degree, it makes you look less credible. So we want to take that out of our language entirely. And then something that kind of dovetails into that is the phrase, I'll be honest, or let me be honest, or something like that. So this is typically something that people will preface a statement with. So a journalist will ask them a question, and then they'll say, well, I'll be honest, I think XYZ. Well, now we've got 2 of those things we shouldn't be saying in one answer. But what that does is it makes people assume that you haven't been being honest prior to that, right? I'll be honest. Okay, well, what were you being before that, right? Were you not telling me the truth? Were you obfuscating? Were you deflecting, like what exactly is it, and why are you honest sometimes but not others, right? So this introduces a level of doubt, not just in terms of your confidence, but more importantly, in terms of your integrity. If you're selectively honest, that's going to really make it hard for people to trust you. So look, a lot of people who are legitimately honest will make this statement because it almost kind of sounds like you're trying to make what you're saying sound more powerful, more impactful. It doesn't actually do that. It actually detracts from it. So avoid this phrase at all costs. The next one we're going to talk about is the word like. Now, this is one that I hate with a passion, and it's similar to a lot of other filler words, right? Like or one of my filler words that I say more often than I'd like is the word right, for example. Like, we've all got these filler words, but like is probably one of the worst because it makes you sound stupid. It makes you sound immature and inexperienced. So we want to avoid that. Get into the habit of, when you're interviewed, or when you're talking on a podcast, you're talking on a Zoom call, you're just talking to people in general, pay attention and notice if you're using that phrase, right? If you are, you need to start making a very conscious effort to cut that out of your vocabulary. And the same applies for all of the filler words as well. So, right, is another one. All of these types of things we want to avoid because they're basically just filling dead space. And it's something that people do when they're uncertain or maybe they're a little bit nervous. So this can become very problematic because that does start to take away more of your credibility. And then the last one that we're going to unpack today is the phrase, I'm a blank, right? Insert whatever. I'm a doctor. I'm a teacher. I'm a digital marketing expert. I'm a lawyer, like whatever that is. If you're answering a question, or more specifically responding to criticism with, well, I'm this particular title, that is from a kind of a debate perspective, that's something called appeal to authority, or it essentially falls under credentialism, right? It's, oh, well, you can't question me because I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a teacher, or whatever. And that hurts your credibility because nobody is above criticism. Nobody is above being asked questions. Nobody is above having to prove their ideas. So what you have to do, instead of relying on a silly title because credentialism is dead, you have to actually be able to articulate your thoughts. You have to be able to show why you are right and why other positions are wrong. So we want to avoid this at all costs because it really makes it look like we can't actually support the statements or the arguments that we're making. So we're appealing to credentialism in an effort to shut down any criticism. And if you get on the wrong side of that, let's say with a journalist or somebody who's got more time than sense and sits around on social media arguing with people all day, you get one of those types of people, either the journo or the troll. And what tends to happen is they just drag the shit out of you and you can't answer it. And it makes other people look at you with less trust because you cannot articulate your position. You're just essentially saying, well, because I went to medical school, or I was a teacher for 30 years, or I was a lawyer, whatever the title, whatever the credential is, if you're leaning on that, it shows people that you cannot articulate your position. And if you can't articulate your position, then are you really an expert, right? So you have to be, if you're going to be out here in the public spotlight, you have to be able to articulate your position. You have to be able to handle criticism, and you have to be able to really demonstrate that you know what you're talking about, that you are a legitimate expert. So those are the 5 phrases that you should stop saying because they scorch your credibility. So go back and look through some of your old podcast episodes. Go back and look through some of your old media features. Hell, even look through your content on social media and look for these phrases. And if you find any of them, start making a conscious effort to really cut that out, right? When you're aware of it, when you know what you're saying, the second that you hear these things, it's going to register. You're going to notice it and you're going to cringe a little bit. And it's going to make it pretty easy to start cutting them out. As you think about it more, as you practice more, when one of these words is coming to the front of your mind and it's just about to come out of your mouth, that little bulb's going to go off and you're going to catch it. So just practice eliminating these phrases from your vocabulary entirely. And that will help to build your brand. It will help you to come off as more credible, more authoritative, more confident. All of the good things that impact your brand in a very powerful and positive way. So give that a shot, guys. It's hugely impactful. I promise you that it will make a huge impact on your brand. So we're going to segue into Jeremy's PR PSA for today. And that is, how you communicate determines how people view your brand, no matter how smart or accomplished you may actually be. So you could be the biggest expert in the world. You could be the person with the most experience. You could have encountered the widest variety of situations in your industry. You may have been doing it for 30 years, but if you cannot communicate effectively in a way that inspires trust, that's going to hurt your brand. It's going to create a weaker brand. So by eliminating these 5 phrases that we talked about in today's episode, that's going to go a long way in cutting that problem out entirely and helping you to build a strong and trustworthy, authoritative brand. So that's going to be a wrap for today, guys. Look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. If you guys got some value out of this, if you found this useful, I would love it if you would share it with somebody who you think can benefit from it. And be sure to hit us up wherever you happen to be seeing this, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, whatever, and drop us a comment on this. And, let us know any feedback. If you have any questions, let us know that. And that'll be a wrap for today, guys. I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Thanks, everyone.